All right, well, let's throw it back to the beginning of opening weekend. Let's talk a little bit about North Carolina Courage and Kansas City Current. These were the two teams that kicked off opening weekend and set the regular season in motion. And it was a 1-0 victory to North Carolina Courage. And Lisa, I called it on the preview when we were chatting about this preview. I said, look, we're doing this a little early. We don't have the confirmed availability reports, and we're making a blind pick here. And if they're ready to go, it's going to be Kansas City. And we went with Kansas City. And we said if it's not going to be, a healthy lineup, then things can get kind of tricky here. And it ends up going a narrow victory for North Carolina, all 3 points. Guile with the debut. Again, another player kind of introducing themselves to the league a little bit here, the Danish international, picking up the game winner, and it was a lovely goal. Just decided to get the ball, go on a quick run, and just take the shot from distance. I think completely caught them off guard.
This was a great goal for sure. I mean, a good goal. I'm going to say it was not great because it was a good goal.
It was smart.
And it definitely caught Kansas City off guard completely. She's not going to get another easy one like that at any other game in the league. Now that the NWSL knows what she can do, knows that she's looking to go to goal. This was like a 35 yards out from Kansas City's defensive goal. And she picks up the ball and she's just got a little bit of space and she hits it. She strikes it and places it well, but it wasn't that fast. It wasn't that hard. And it really just caught Kansas City and AD French off guard. I think AD French was a little upset at herself that she didn't get that one, but hey, all it takes is one goal, and that's what the Courage needed to get this big lift over Kansas City. But you just talked about it, Sandra, the availability report, rather the unavailable report for Kansas City, because they had a slew of players unavailable for this team. A couple of season-ending injuries that will be on this list all year long: Mallory Weber, Sam Mewis, and then Claire Lavoisier. So they are all out for the whole season, but Dabinia, she was out for this game, unavailable. Vanessa DiBernardo, Morgan Gautral, Kristen Hamilton, Hannah Glass, and Desiree Scott, who we also know Scott is going to be out for a little bit. But Hamilton, Gautral, DiBernardo, Dabinia, Hannah Glass, those are big pieces that were missing for this Kansas City side. I think it would have been an entirely different game.
I mean, no Kristen Hamilton.
And I mean, no Dabinia, which was like all eyes were on this game.
You just keep going back to that.
Everyone in the country was watching this. Everyone in Brazil was watching this game for Dabinia, and she's not available. Going back to play her old club in Cary, North Carolina, there were tifos and posters and signs for Dabinia that she'll always be a Courage family member, but she was going down that day and she doesn't play. And I think it's a different story if you have even two of those. Give Kansas City Kristen Hamilton, and I think it's a different story. Give them a Morgan Gautral or Vanessa DiBernardo, just one, and I think it's a different story on this day.
No, I'm with you. I think, look, where you look at the availability reports, that opens up opportunity in other areas, right? In terms of positionally in your starting 11, and for Kansas City and Matt Potter, listen, you signed a bunch of rookies to contracts, and guess what? You're going to learn today, and that's what happened in week 1. Honestly, I think that's my take. I think that's my takeaway. If you're Kansas City and you're looking at your week 1 and you're saying, okay, maybe this is a game where we looked at like we dropped some points or left some points behind, but it's week 1. What are the gains here? What are the silver linings, right? And they knew heading into this week that they were going to be without multiple players, specifically that big 3, right? I guess we could just refer to them as that, the big 3 of their free agency, with Dabinia and Morgan Gautral and Vanessa DiBernardo. But that opened things up for rookies to get those minutes. So whether it was a Gabrielle Robinson or an Alexa Spanstra or their number 2 overall pick in Michelle Cooper, right? And I thought that was probably the for me watching the game, I'm like, okay, well, this is the takeaway from your
Totally.
that Michelle Cooper has this ridiculous, relentless work rate, and we saw it in this game. I think we saw the Courage do a really good job of getting off to a quick start, getting on the front foot in this game, kind of taking that game to Kansas City. And maybe they should have had more than one coming out of that first half, but that's not how it worked out.
Yeah.
Caroline doing maddening things on the ball, right? Completely exposing space on the right side and taking advantage of that. So yeah, it was a little nervy, I think, to not have the insurance goal come. But it was enough. And then within that, we saw Kansas City, though, you leave room for a team to come back. And we saw in the second half, Kansas City started to like level out the shot total against North Carolina. But when we're looking at that, I think that's where you're looking at the numbers and you're like, Sandra, like, is it really, should we really be like praising, the rookies this high coming off of the opening week? And the answer is yeah.
There are the stats to back it up.
The numbers are there. Alyssa Thompson got the goal in her debut. Michelle Cooper is over here, accounting for 5 of 11 of Kansas City's shots. And
Michelle Cooper across the board was the stat leader for Kansas City in 5 shots, 2 of them on target, 5 of them coming from inside the box. Incredible block shots. Like, she led the board for Kansas City in stats.
Yeah, I loved her. There was a really good moment in the game where we saw the other teams like MVP. I think if you're looking at MVPs for both of these teams, that when I wrote up this game, I went with team MVPs as Caroline and Gael, obviously, for getting the goal, but for Kansas City it was Cooper and French, in terms of sort of keeping things together, keeping the scoreline low for Kansas City to try to go ahead and get back in. It just didn't happen for them. But there was a great little kind of 1v1 moment where you just saw Cooper make this brilliant recovery run and kind of shield off Caroline in the end, kind of eliminating a dangerous moment there, perhaps. But this one ends in a narrow scoreline. It was cool to sort of hear from the coaches in the post game in this one as well. I think it wasn't lost on either of them. Maybe for Potter, for some of the things that they could have done better, or even for Coach Nahas and the North Carolina side of things, that praising his young players as well. That it was referring to it as a real gutsy win, because it went from them kind of having all these opportunities to all of a sudden they had to really try to sustain a narrow lead. So
and we got to see for the Courage, Tyler Lucy get a start, and we were unsure where we'd see her play. She was in the front line. She was tasked as a forward, and I think she was honestly an MVP in my eyes of this game. I mean, of course, Caroline dancing on the ball, making Kansas City defenders look silly. Just the space that Caroline can occupy and create for herself and for her teammates is truly a gift, and it is such a pleasure to watch Caroline play. But Tyler Lucy did a really nice job attacking down that right side, and the overloads with Caroline, it was too much. It was a handful for Kansas City to handle. And a lot of that because of a player like Tyler Lucy and what she was able to do on the pitch. It was good to see her. And I like Emily Fox being on the right. So we saw her so much on the left, and I'm so glad she's playing on the right. That's her strong side with that right foot, and the combination with Fox and Lucy, it could be magical this year. It really could.
Yeah, I thought Fox had a great game. Got really, really high and in the middle of the pitch at times for the Current. I'm eager to see what the Courage sort of build off of in terms of this victory and going into next week as well. Just some very, very good moments from their players individually and as a collective. And so I'm eager to sort of see what that looks like in the next week. I mean, I really liked it. It just took, we're talking 5 minutes for this team to really just sort of present themselves to not only Kansas City, but to the league, whether it was, Caroline creating this chaos very, very early, or, Narumi Miura, the Japanese international, sort of getting an early chance and look on goal. Like I said, very, very interesting pieces that I don't think a lot of folks are maybe familiar with some of the players and their games internationally. And we're going to get to see that as it develops over the course of a regular season in NWSL with the Courage. But not the only 1-goal scoreline this week. We also have to talk about Washington Spirit versus OL Reign, and you and I are taking collective L's now here, Lisa. We also went with the Reign in this one, and we were incorrect. And maybe we should have listened to history a little bit. Maybe we should have just looked at the record and say, listen, the Spirit have typically gotten the better of the Reign, and they're going to do it again in week 1. But we didn't. We didn't listen to history. We thought that the Reign had enough pieces here to sort of continue to build off of that Shield winning.
And I think that's our fault as well, because we should have looked at OL Reign's roster and how much it didn't change at all from last year and think, hey, are they going to struggle in the same areas? Yes, finding the back of the net.
The ball 60 times and get 0 goals? Quite possibly.
Yes, it's the same group. Of course they're going to do the same thing. I mean, silly us. So whoever's listening to us for their betting tips, I mean, you're on your own.
We're not an odd show, thankfully. 1-0 Trinity Rodman with the moment of brilliance here in this game. I loved it. I loved this goal. Kudos to the ball players out there who decided, you know what? If I've got this many touches on a run at this point, I'm just going to shoot it and go. And we saw that a couple times over the course of week 1, and sometimes they led to goals. And I love that this happened for Rodman. I think at this point, if you're making such a good run and you've got defenders who cannot catch up with you, then why not just take a crack? And she went ahead and did it. And beat Valentellis Joyce, and it was a great goal by Rodman. The celebration, I like to see. I liked that there are some players who had celebrations ready in case they scored. It looked like it got interrupted a little bit, but I still A for me, A for effort. You love to see it.
I think the goal from Rodman really was impressive. I mean, this is something that fans of Rodman in general, I'm not just going to say Washington, have been waiting for her to do, almost take a little bit more ownership of the game in front of her and not rely on the pieces around her. I mean, don't get me wrong, Rodman has created magic for herself and for her teammates time and time again, but in this moment, it is her. There is no assists at all anywhere near this play. It comes in off of a throw-in, and Rodman just spins out of a couple defenders and attacks the space, as you said. And why OL Reign defenders do not step to her? None of them close down the space. None of them think, wow, she's one of the best players in this league. Let me close down the space and make sure she can't shoot. Nope. This was a beautiful shot from Rodman, about 20 yards out. She finds the back of the net. It's just after the halftime as well. So it was a great way for them to start the halftime. And I think that perhaps was a little bit of the conversation for Mark Parsons and the Spirit squad in the locker room at halftime. There's a lot of space. Take it. Yeah. Take players on 1v1. Have ownership of what you're doing, because we saw a little bit more of that throughout the second half for the Spirit.
I want to ask you about this space that you brought up here, because we saw maybe a little bit of a positional or tactical introduction here from Laura Harvey. We got to see Emily Sonnet in the midfield, and we're talking about space or pockets of space that have been exposed. I'm curious if we're going to continue to see Sonnet in the midfield here for the Reign moving forward. Call it week 1, or dusting off the preseason rust and getting back into form, because Sonnet is one of these players that is still working back from an injury sustained last year and building on minutes. But just some moments where we saw her kind of just playing directly into pressure, versus sort of playing out. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on maybe how the midfield looked there for the Reign.
I don't like Emily Sonnet in that defensive 6 role. Those are my thoughts. I don't think I don't think she is as effective there as you need the 6 to be. I mean, that's like one of the most important positions on the pitch, because not only do you have to be the first line of actual hard tackle defense, you actually have to make those stops, because if it gets past you, you're leaving your center backs in a very exposed state. And then on the flip side of it, with the ball, the defensive midfielder 6, in this case, Emily Sonnet, has to be the one to play simple. You can't lose the ball. The pass completion for a defensive 6 midi needs to be above 95%, 90% maybe on a bad day. But that was not the case for Emily Sonnet. I think she tried too much. I think there was almost this mindset for her that she was like, oh, I'm not in the back line. I'm in the midfield. I can take risks and try some crazy things. And that was not going to work for her. And then even as the game went on and as a player, you can sense, hey, my passes aren't connecting. I'm struggling a little bit. I feel lost in space and defensive structure. I mean, that's why Rodman was able to score that goal, because Emily Sonnet was pulled well out of position and she wasn't occupying that space to step to the ball where Rodman was running. And as a player, Emily Sonnet, I didn't see her making any in-game adjustments as to, okay, I'm really going to play the ball simple. I'm not going to try anything tricky. I'm not going to play square balls. I'm going to find an open man and just connect with them. So that was something that was tough to see. It was an interesting effort from OL Reign and Laura Harvey's side to try that out.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, kudos to the goalkeepers. I think there were a couple games throughout the weekend that you and I were looking at, like, oh, like where are we going to see the game that's going to be a little bit of a goalkeeper battle? And I don't know if this was necessarily a battle per se, but I know for both of these goalkeepers, they had to come up with a couple of pretty big saves on either ends. And I thought that Kingsbury had a really great match for the Spirit in this one, helping, help to lock up all three of those points for the Spirit in match week 1.